So I know I said before that a lot of the reason why I got talked out of my home birth was because I wasn't given all of my options and I wasn't told the truth about what happened with the ultrasounds. And I wasn't told that I could have said no anyway. But that's not the whole story. You see, when I was planning to have this hospital birth that I really, really didn't want, and I was trying to work through all of my fears and try to come to terms with the fact that I might have to have an induction or I might have to end up in a cesarean or just having a baby in the hospital and all these things that I really didn't want, I kind of left this part out of the story. My midwife called me at 39 weeks. And when I got that phone call, that could have been a way to shift me out of that fear and put me back in control. I could have had a home birth. So what she said to me was, Carly, I just got back from vacation. I am so sorry that this has been happening to you. I have been following your case for the last 2 weeks. I know what's happening. I know that people are telling you that the ultrasounds are badly, that the ultrasounds are wrong. I know that they're telling you that your baby is too small. I know you've been going for non-stress tests. I know that you're now planning a hospital birth, but I need to tell you this. And I've been arguing with my colleagues over it and they haven't wanted me to say anything, but I can't keep quiet anymore. The truth is that first ultrasound that was done back when you were 35 weeks was very badly done. In fact, there's nothing wrong with your baby at all. You can have a home birth. And I know that you missed the boat on having that home visit and you're 39 weeks now, but if you still want that, then I will make sure that that happens this week. We will have a home birth visit this week and we will go over everything and I'll set everything up. And you know what I said to her? I said it was too late. I told her I didn't have any supplies. I told her that I hadn't bothered to rent the birth pool or get the liner. She said, we have a birth pool. I said, well, I don't have the liner and it's not going to be available on time because I have to order it online. I can get you a liner, she said. I said, I don't have any towels. I don't have any cloths. I have nothing for home birth and I need 12 towels and I didn't get any of that. I can get that for you, she said. I don't have any of the other stuff that we need to have ready for home birth. I don't have those pads. I don't have anything else that I need. And I don't have the Chuck's pads. I don't have the thermometer. I have nothing. I can get all that stuff for you. She said, do you want a home birth? And I thought about it and I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know at this point. And, my partner, he's now preparing for a hospital birth. We've already told everybody we're going to have a hospital birth. We're planning a hospital birth. And she's like, but you don't have to have a hospital birth. You can have a home birth if you want. If you really want it, we can set it up. And I just kept thinking, I'm due at 40 weeks. I'm due on May 10th. And she's telling me this at 39 weeks. And I don't have time to get everything ready. And I don't have time to change my plans again. And this is the part I didn't say. I was scared. You see, even though I used my partner as the excuse and said, well, if he's more comfortable having a hospital birth, then I'm going to give in and I'm going to just do it in the hospital. The truth was that over the course of 35 weeks onwards, from that point, I was told at every single appointment that my baby might not be growing properly. And I would keep asking over and over, well, am I gaining weight? Well, yes, you are. Well, the non-stress tests are coming up fine. Yes, they are. But anything can go wrong at any minute. And most first-time moms transfer anyway. And you probably don't know what labor is going to even be like. If you're going to be able to handle it, you might as well just have your baby in the hospital. We don't have gas at home births, was what I was told. And so I was scared of the pain, first of all. As a first-time mom, I had no way of knowing what to expect. But I was also afraid that something would go wrong. Because from the point on, from 35 weeks onward, I was told, what if something goes wrong? And even though intuitively I knew that I could birth my baby, 100% my way. I could birth my baby at home. Intuitively, I knew that. And even though my doula had said to me, well, what happens if you just accidentally have a baby at home? And I thought about that. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I could probably just call them at the very last minute and say I changed my mind. Like, these were the thoughts going through my head. But ultimately, what I decided was to go to the hospital because I was afraid. I was afraid of something going wrong. I was afraid that my instincts were off and that I didn't know what I was talking about. And so this emotion hijacks your brain if you're not careful. And this is what happened to me, is this emotion hijacked my brain. And I have been working a lot in coaching and learning the mindset techniques. I have a psychology background. And honestly, it probably should have occurred to me earlier that this is what was going on, but it took 2 births for me to finally realize what this emotion was. Are you ready? It's fear. Fear keeps you stuck. Fear is the thing that causes you to start to doubt yourself the second somebody says something to the contrary of what you want. If you tell somebody that you're having a home birth and their answer isn't good for you, I'm proud of you, that's awesome, but instead, oh, I've heard stories that like home birth doesn't always go very well. What if something happens? What if you can't get to the hospital in time? And they put that fear on you. Those fears can creep up on you and keep circulating in your head. And it's going to continue to feed into your own emotions that then hijack your brain. Because no matter how much we want it to be true, our brains are not completely logical. When it comes to making actual decisions, it's not the logic that drives our decision. If it was, then when I was saying to people that you have a 1 per 1,000 going to 2 per 1,000 chance of having a stillbirth and induction is really not needed for going past your due date, more people would be like, awesome, I'm just going to stay home. If I just say to a client, you can have a home birth and you can just stay home and wait until you're pushing, then what happens with that is that unfortunately, they're not going to listen to that if they haven't gotten out of their fear. So what I do with my clients as a birth doula and an empowerment coach and a childbirth educator is I combine everything into at least a 3-month program. And the reason that it's 3 months is because that's how long it takes to get them out of their fear and into their power and understanding physiological birth and being able to make that transformation. And I found that when I'm working with my clients at this level and helping them through their fears, what ultimately happens is that by the 2nd month, they start to have more intuitive planning. So they'll start to say to me things like, well, you know what? I think I'm going to change my plan a bit. I'm like, oh, and it's like, yeah. Beforehand, I was thinking I wanted to do this, but now I'm realizing that might be really triggering for me. So I need to make a plan around that. So they start to see where in their life and in their birth planning that things aren't going to work because they've started to address those fears. And these fears, as I said, can hold you back. So if I'm meeting with somebody at the very end of their pregnancy, and this has often happened, is that I'll give them information, but they haven't taken the time to really explore their fears, and they haven't taken that time to master those fears. Because what you want often is on the other side of your comfort zone. And I've learned this in business, and I've learned this in becoming an empowered mom and in leaving my abusive relationship. I needed to get out of my fear before I could do that. This is also why a lot of women end up staying in these relationships and why I myself was in that relationship and why it took me so long to start my business as well, is that I was sticking to fear. Fear stops us. So it's not logic. It's not logic. You can go and read all of the birth books. You can go read Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. You can read Give Birth Like a Feminist. You can read The Birth Partner. You can read all those childbirth books behind me. You can go online. You can read the mom blogs. You can take advantage of all of the information that I give every single week inside of these classes. You could send me a message and ask me, hey, do you have a resource on this? And I'd send it to you. But if you don't get out of your fear, then none of that is going to make any bit of difference. Because I can tell you all day long what the actual rates are of likelihood that you would end up with a complication. I can tell you all day long how awesome home birth is. But if you have those fears still controlling your emotions and you don't know how to recognize that and you don't know how to conquer that, what ends up happening is none of that information does any good. And you will go into your birth and all of a sudden you'll agree to something that you said you weren't going to agree to. And that's the next story I want to tell you, is that I didn't get talked into a cervical check. I started to get fearful. And that's why I ended up agreeing to the horrifically painful cervical check when I was in my early labor with my daughter. Now, remember, I had spent 2 years inside of the birth community as a birth advocate. I had poured over countless research. Like, you need to understand something about how much I threw myself into this work in the 2 years after my son was born and how determined I was to be able to have a home birth. And so I really threw myself into this and I read everything, absolutely everything. I knew absolutely everything there was to know about the fact that home birth was safe and physiological birth was safe and how to advocate for myself. And I knew that I could say no to cervical checks, that even though it was policy, I didn't have to do it. I knew that my midwife couldn't really force me into it. And yet I still ended up agreeing to a cervical check. And the reason why I did it wasn't because I wanted it. It was because I was afraid. I was afraid because she had started putting doubts in my head. She had said, second-time moms go fast. And I had basically internalized that and thought, why isn't my baby coming? Why have I had weeks and weeks of prodromal labor? Why is she still not here after 24 hours of me being in labor with her? Why are things not progressing? Something must be wrong. I need to know where I'm at. And so I agreed to the cervical check that I did not want. Even though as it was happening, I was like pulling back and it was horrifically painful and I didn't want it, I still ended up agreeing to it. And you know what the really scary thing is? After my labor stalled, I also started to think, I can't actually do this. I can't have a home birth. My home birth is going to be taken away from me and I'm going to have to go to the hospital. And it was as the midwife had gone home, because I just could not deal with that situation right then. And I sent her home and I sent the doula home. And I spent all day in my bed just crying and just being like, I don't know what to do now. Because if I call the midwife back, she's going to want more cervical checks done to see where I'm at in my progress. And I'm not going to progress it the way that she wants me to. And what am I going to do? And then it came to me that I could just not call her. And that if I didn't call her, then I would be facing the possibility that I wouldn't have a midwife there for the birth. Fortunately, I had read a book called The Power of Pleasurable Childbirth, and that had helped me understand more about my capabilities with physiological birth. Because the thing is that was the unassisted childbirth book that I knew about. It was one that my doula had given me. There was no reclaiming childbirth as a rite of passage when I was going through my own pregnancy. That book did not exist yet. So I didn't have the whole structure of what Rachel Reed talks about, but I did follow her blog and I did understand a little bit more about physiological birth. But that's, again, the logic side. The fear side that was taking over was telling me, you can't do this. You're not going to progress. So what I ended up doing is I had to find some way to conquer that fear. And that's the process that I really want to teach you. And I'd love to get into that. But the thing is this process takes much longer than the 30 minutes or 15 minutes that I can teach in one day. So I've noticed something about fear and how it stops us. And I do this on a bigger level with my clients, but I have an actual process to help you get out of your fear. And I call it the Get Out of Your Fear in 5 Days challenge. If you are on the email list, then you already have a little bit of an idea of what this entails. So here's what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you why the heck we're so afraid of birth. And I'm going to help you examine that culture, why we're afraid of birth. And I'm going to share a little bit more about my story of how I came from being an absolutely terrified of birth, first-time mom, to becoming this amazing birth advocate and doula, and just talking about physiological birth all the time, and having had 2 births myself, planning a home birth and getting a hospital birth, but still managing to get out of my fear in the very last second to stop myself from giving into a cesarean. And I'm also going to teach you about how I came to my second birth and planned my home birth with my daughter. Because the thing is that I want to make sure that you're not going to fall into your fear. I've seen this happen too often. Too often, I've given information, and then a couple of weeks later, they come back to me and they're like, actually, I think I'm just going to go with what they said because I'm scared. And then I have to work through that all over again because I didn't give them that framework to get out of that fear. Because as I said, this has only been what I've been doing with my coaching, and it's a process that I really have honed over the last year and a half, especially, in order to get my clients out of their fear so fast. So when they come to me every single week and they start to doubt themselves, I can put them back in that place of power. But this is basically going to lay the groundwork for that so that you can do the same thing for yourself. So first day, we're going to talk about why you're so afraid of birth. And then the second day, I'm going to talk about where these fears come from. And the third day is how this keeps us stuck. And then the fourth day is how to fix that. So I will actually tell you how to fix that. And then on day 5, I'm going to share a story with you of my dear friend Jenny, who, when she came to me just last year, what happened is that she was absolutely traumatized after her birth. She was determined to not let this happen to anybody else. But she also said to me, I don't think I'm going to have any more babies. And that was a very similar echo to what my friend Christine had said back when we were running Improving Birth together. She said, I don't think I'm going to have any more babies. And in fact, if I end up pregnant again, I'll probably just schedule a C-section. You might remember when I shared about Christine before, she ended up having a home birth after cesarean. So she went from having that fear of, I think I might just end up with another cesarean because I can just control it this time, to I'm having a VBAC in the hospital, and then to actually baby's coming fast and I'm just going to have this baby at home. I'm not getting on that bed. And the same thing for Jenny is I'm not having a baby. And then a couple of months later, while working with me, she started to think, well, maybe I might have another one in a few years. I might. And then the more we continued to work together, she was then thinking, I've moved up my timeline. I think I might start trying for a baby this year. And then by the time we got to November, when we were running the Empowered Birth workshop for November 2021, what happened is she was then saying to me, you know what? We're trying. We're actually trying right now. And then a couple of weeks after that, she was pregnant. So now Jenny is in her second pregnancy. She's in her second trimester, and she's feeling so empowered because no matter what comes up, no matter what her care provider says to her, and he is a doctor, he's a family doctor, but he also specializes in birth. And when he says things, she can stay in her power and continue to keep control of her birth because she knows that those are his fears, not hers. And she can continue when she starts to have those little fears come up. We can work through them in like 5 minutes. So again, I'm going to be teaching you how to do this within 5 days. It's basically 15 to 30 minutes a day. And then once you have that system figured out, you're going to be able to do it anytime you start to get fearful. In fact, by laying this groundwork, you're going to be able to identify your fear in like maybe 5 minutes or less and be like, oh yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. And this is what I'm actually committed to. This will also help you create your birth plan. In fact, I use this framework a lot when I'm teaching my students inside of my Take Charge of Birth program. And as well, when I'm working with my live coaching clients, and we go through this strategy, this exact same strategy that I'm going to be teaching you when we're figuring out who to hire as a care provider, where to go when we're finding a birth location, how to get our partner on board, how to deal with something that's just come up, either a complication, coming up with a backup plan, coming up with your birth plan, even labor. This is very important that you want to get out of your fear, because there's a fear, tension, pain cycle that happens that allows you to either have less pain or more pain. So when you tense up, for instance, because of your fear, birth is going to be more painful and there's more resistance. You need to be able to let go. So this is going to help you not only create your birth plan, not only get out of your actual fear, but it's also going to be beneficial for you for labor and beyond that. Because once you know the system, you'll be able to do amazing things in your own life. As I said, I left an abusive relationship using this structure. I also ended up building a business using this structure. So this is really powerful, and it's actually a high-level coaching technique that I've picked up within the virtual coach community. And in addition to that, when you sign up for the e-newsletter, you actually get you get a natural birth guide from me. And it tells you the 5 big mistakes that people make when planning a natural birth. And these are things that you wouldn't think of. These are things that a lot of people don't know about. So when you get that natural birth guide, not only will you have that information, but every single week within the e-newsletter, I also send additional tips. I send little coaching techniques that I've used with my clients that will help you get out of your fear, that will help you start planning and thinking about your birth in a new way, so that you really can take charge of your birth and come to it from a place of power instead of that fear. So all of this ties in together. And again, if you want to get that newsletter, all you need to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com, and there's a little button that you can push at the very top of the banner that says get the free birth guide, and you just sign up for that way. You just put in your email, put in your name, and you'll be able to get that. And if you ever have any questions, you can always send me a message either through Facebook, or you can send me an email through carly@empoweringmomsbirth.ca. All right, well, I can't wait to share this with you. And yeah, you're going to be able to get past your fear in 5 days. That's my promise to you. I can't wait to see you. All right, bye.